Hi, this is Dean Webb for networking-forums.com, and since I had a couple hours to kill before my flight left, I thought, hey, I've got good lighting in this hotel room, and just as I said that, the lighting goes dark. Why not make another video? So let's talk about segmentation. Yes, I mentioned that in the IPS versus IDS video just before this. So let's take a closer look at the concept of segmentation. Network segmentation is the idea that you shouldn't be able to just have everything in the network talk to everything else in the network without restriction. That there should be some sort of rules for traffic from the general user floor going to sensitive areas of the network. For example, you can have a production area or where there's medical devices where you have some very sensitive equipment and you don't want that exposed to just regular traffic. It could damage or destroy those pieces of sensitive equipment. You may also have sensitive data. For example, under PCI-DSS or HIPAA, or there's a new one, High Trust is a new regulation standard, or NIST 800-171. I could go on. We've got regulations that say access to personal data needs to be done only from authorized systems, from authorized users, and that we can validate that they've got the right stuff on them and so on. And basically, you want to make sure there's a rule in place that will not allow that traffic to just come in from anywhere and hit personal data. So we have these business rules and regulations that are in place. And so out of that came the idea of segmentation, not just for control of the IP address space, but for control of what the network use is. So there's two ways to segment. There's physical segmentation and there's virtual segmentation. Virtual segmentation would say, for example, I have a switch. Let's say it's a chassis switch, so there's rich port density on there. We've got a couple, maybe 1,000 ports on this one, which is not small for some switches. I'm just saying. Anyway, so we got 1,000 ports on this switch, and in this switch there are a number of VLANs. And let's say that everything, we've got all the financials on one VLAN and all the users on another VLAN and all the production gear on another VLAN. So we have all these VLANs here, and they're routable to each other. But we're going to use some VRF magic to force traffic from a user VLAN to go through a firewall before it comes back into the switch to say the financials VLAN. Well, this is virtual segmentation because all the devices are on the same switch. And the only separation they have is in that VLAN environment and the VRF rules. That if something were to happen to that switch, say it was compromised, it would be relatively easy to move one port from one VLAN to another, and now there's no restriction on the traffic there. He just gets a new IP address and he can go. When would virtual segmentation be the right thing to do? Well, if you have a complicated environment and you have to stretch VLANs across switches and you have a highly mixed environment, we'll say, virtual segmentation may be an appropriate thing because physical segmentation says you're going to have a separate path, a physical path. The electrons can't just go into one box and then go through the firewall module on that box and then back to another VLAN on that box. They have got to travel across a wire, through another firewall, through another IPS, to another switch, and then get to their destination. So that physical segmentation, though, can also have a lot of cost associated. We go back to the virtual one. Remember that we have the chassis switch, and we'll say we have a firewall module in it, or maybe there's a separate firewall attached to it. Well, what if your company says everything's got to be in an HA cluster? If one device fails, the other one picks up in a heartbeat, right? So you've got 2 chassis switches and 2 firewalls with all the crisscross on there. That's it. That's it. That's all you got. Low cost there. But for your physical segmentation, you've got your pair of chassis switches, and they want to go through a pair of firewalls that are in HA mode to get to that production area, and then a pair of IPSs that are in, remember, HA, and they're going to that same production, and then a pair of switches on the other side to handle the production VLANs. So you got a lot more devices. There is a higher cost associated with that. Now, yes, it is more secure simply because you have to pass through a lot more stuff to get there, and you can have a lot more control that way. And honestly, it's easy for your security guys to understand. There's a kind of a reputation among security guys that they don't know how to do routing. Guilty. Yeah, no, I know how to route, but when they start talking about virtual routing and forwarding, I go, ooh, let's get our routing and switching expert in here. He can help flesh this one out, because I'm lost there. It's not my strength. It's okay. I admit it freely. But yeah, a lot of security guys like static routes. And it's probably because they got used to working with gear that really couldn't do a lot of good routing anyway. It was a bunch of static routes. So they got used to it. But yeah, security guys like the physical segmentation. It's easy to see. It's easy for an auditor to see that absolutely every time the only path is through these devices. For an auditor to see segmentation in a virtualized manner, it does take a little more analysis, and it may take a little longer to prove. But if you do your documentation properly and you have good diagrams, you'll be able to demonstrate it. It's not that virtual segmentation is that much worse than physical. I don't think it is that much worse. I think physical is, okay, it's like a gold standard, and virtual segmentation is like a gold, 50% gold, 50% silver standard. It's still good. And the best part of this is, again, looking at the small, medium business, the local government scenario, a lot of this can be done for relatively low cost. The gear that you need is not overly specialized. You can find some, maybe some refurbished gear that you can still get under warranty or under maintenance. Put it in place, and there you go. You don't necessarily need very large things. If you're looking at a production floor of, say, 20 devices, well, a 24-port switch is not that expensive. And a small firewall is also not that expensive either. We're dealing with a total cost in the thousands, not tens of thousands, or let alone hundreds of thousands. If you're looking at segmenting a massive physical plant, okay, you're looking at something bigger, but chances are your budget's also a lot bigger. Anyway, the best way to approach segmentation is to do it area by area. Consider, what do I have that's important? How do I make better protection on it? Certainly your servers. Start there. I've been in an environment where they had a massive outage, and it was a flat network, and one of the first things we introduced was segmentation, because we were going to, I'm a NAC engineer, my vendor does a NAC product, so that's what I was there to do. And I said, hey, you know what, with the NAC system, we're going to have regular VLAN, we're going to have remediation VLAN, we'll have a quarantine VLAN, we'll have a dirty VLAN, we got all these VLANs. How do we want them talking to other VLANs? And at that point, we realized, you know what? We also have special use cases for the servers. So let's get the servers on their own VLAN, and we can put rules in place. We found they actually found a pair of firewalls that were on the shelf that hadn't been used. They're just waiting there. They were a license, ready to go. So we'll fire them up, put the VLANs, have them get rules set up there so that way we can see what's going into the servers. And we started segmenting. So the servers were first. Then stuff that was for remediation and quarantine was second, because we want to make sure that these guys only have access to limited resources. And then we started looking at, okay, what are some other areas in this network that we want to make sure that when this happens again, it's not as big an impact, or it gets stopped. Maybe it affects one part of the network, but it doesn't get through to the others. So you look at different departments that may have different use cases, that may have different exposures, and ones with a risky level of exposure, you want to protect the rest of the network from those networks. At the same time, you have devices that can't get patched. They're at risk if the rest of the network talks to them. So you have to protect them from the rest of the network. There's some areas where it's a combination of the two, where you've got devices that are so old or they can't be patched because the vendor doesn't exist anymore. So one, they're at high risk for infection from users, but at the same time, they can host all kinds of horrible things. And if the user talks to it, it will infect them with stuff that we didn't think about. Wow. So yeah, you can get some mind-blowing stuff going on. So yeah, segmentation can actually be one where we're protecting everybody. Everybody on that network is getting protected, and everybody not on that network is getting protected from that one network. It's very so yeah. But you look at different areas. So if you have a DMZ, that's a segment. You may already have a segment, not even know it. What? Yeah. But you want to make sure that also that the traffic paths are very carefully controlled in these segments. You do not want a situation where you say, well, open up all the ports for this one device because he's got to get in to manage that. That means basically that one device is now going to be an infection vector. You don't want that. You want to be able to say, what are the things I need to communicate through there? Well, only allow those. Consider the use of jump boxes, where I've got one device here on this side of the firewall that will be able to talk to one device on the other side of the firewall, and I can transfer my patches to that other box, and then that box will then talk to all the others on that production network or the server network to get them up to speed there. The servers themselves or the gear itself does not go to the internet. And there are some other fancier solutions that actually allow vendors to SSH in through an SSH proxy to get to that production network. It's going to come with a higher cost, so I'm not going to talk about it in detail here, but such things exist. So I mentioned it in passing. So clever, aren't I? But you do want to have strong rules there, so you don't have a situation where, like I mentioned before, all the traffic for one box goes in and winds up infecting things. And you certainly don't want to permit any all rule because that defeats the whole purpose of segmentation. Segmentation means you limit the traffic. We have devices that will communicate on port 443, and they have a web cert installed, and that's all they do. 443, oh, okay, and 22, but that's it. Just those two ports. Okay, well, there's a barcode reader that needs a database port open. Well, okay, just those two ports for every device, and then the barcode reader gets the one for the database and the connection to the printer that's on this side of the network. But that's it. Okay? Took a while there. We got it segmented. And if we have a business case to open up another port, we submit documentation for it. We see which manager is responsible. And we also want to put in a review date so we can check it again and make sure that we still need that rule. That's another part there, firewall configuration management. Oh, good gracious. Will I have another video? Maybe not today because I got to get ready to get on my plane. But maybe next time I'm in a hotel room somewhere with a flight looming over me. Maybe I'll do another video. But anyway, segment your network. Have fun with it. No, have a project with it. Because you don't want to just get yelled at one day. How come my network got segmented? You didn't tell me. You don't want to have that happen now. So get a segmentation thing going because remember, every little bit of security helps. So for networking-forums.com, I'm Dean Webb. Reminding you that if you swing by the forum and ask a question, there's a lot of really smart people there ready to give you a lot of really good answers. Until next time, see ya.